Hey everybody, this is the Titanic Gamer Dude here. Welcome back to my Let's Play of Resident Evil 7 on Madhouse difficulty. And for all intents and purposes, it's actually over. I've successfully beat the game with some struggles. Unfortunately, due to my own hubris and idiocy. But I'm going to just share my thoughts on the game. I haven't touched Ethan Must Die, and I haven't touched that mini game with Clancy. Yeah, this is Redfield. I don't know why they made him look a little bit like Chris, like Vanilla Chris in Resident Evil 1 and Code Veronica. I just don't know why. But yeah, this is the good ending. Mia survives. Don't know if Zoe dies or if she lives. And yeah, everyone's happy. So my thoughts on the game. This game is just a solid game overall. Unfortunately, since I've played like most of the other Resident Evil games, the only Resident Evil games I haven't played would be 1, 3, and Code Veronica. But I've seen walkthroughs of them on YouTube. I haven't played Operation Raccoon City. I heard that game was pretty just garbage. And what's the other Resident Evil game? I've played Revelations 1 and 2. I haven't played Resident Evil Survivor and Dead Aim either. Haven't played Umbrella Chronicles or Darkside Chronicles. Although Darkside Chronicles is just a retelling of Resident Evil 2 and Code Veronica, along with Operation Javier, which features Leon and Jack Krauser, before Krauser went insane. But I've seen videos of all of them on YouTube, and I've played 4, Resident Evil 4, 5, 6, 0, and I can actually say this game is pretty solid. This game uses it uses the atmosphere pretty well. This game is very atmospheric because you don't know what's going to happen next. And I'd say the enemies are pretty interesting. You know, they're just super organisms that branch off from the mold, or they're just dead bodies that are used to power the mold, and then the mold just shapes and takes form, and there you go, there's a molded. Unfortunately, what this game lacks is this game lacks interesting characters. Literally. Like, what happened to Zoe? What happened to Lucas? This game lacks interesting characters. Like, Lucas is clearly a psychopath. It 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 never states what they were like before infection, although you know they're probably a typical family, so I can understand that. Evelyn is pretty much the only interesting part of this game. Ethan, he's just, when you compare the new characters to the older characters like Ada Wong, Leon, Chris, Piers, Jill, Barry, they just crumble apart fast. But I do like the first person perspective, and I do like the reimagining of some of the older mechanics in Resident Evil. But the characters are as bland and boring as you can get. And yeah, that's about it. Yeah, this is the Titanic Gamer Dude here. Sorry I left the video like that. I have more explaining to do. It was just kind of on impulse. But yeah, overall, Resident Evil 7 is it's it's good. It's just that the characters are as just generic and bland as you can get. Not only that, but although the boss fights do get more and more intense, unfortunately, Jack Baker is if you know what to do against Jack Baker, he is cake. Unfortunately, I couldn't pull it off because my aiming wasn't on point. But with Jack Baker, enhanced handgun ammo with the replica Albert just wrecks him. You shoot him like 3 times, and bam, phase 2 is already initiated, and you can get the chainsaw. And it's not even recommended you use the chainsaw throughout that fight. It's recommended that you just use the Albert, because you can force him to reveal his weak spot, and then you can just cut it, and you can just go to phase 3. And you can, after phase 3, you can just end him so fast. The Margaret fight, I have mixed feelings on that fight. The fight itself, like, if there is one thing in Resident Evil 7 I wished for, it would be like, there would be a health bar. Like, there could be like a visible health bar above the character's head, or there would be some type of audible noise that could be heard that would give the player insight on how much health they have and where it's possibly at. You know, like, let me give an example. Like with the Margaret fight, I don't know how many ticks there are, but it makes a tick noise. The problem with the tick noise is it's far too low and it's very inaudible. And if you increase the noise, the ticking noise, I would be less frustrated at that fight, because that fight is very annoying, and it's easily the hardest fight in Resident Evil 7 in my opinion. As far as final bosses go, Evelyn is Evelyn's is so bad. Like, it is really bad. The final boss of Resident Evil 7 is just the easiest in the series. And that shocks me because, like, Resident Evil Revelations 2, its bosses are pretty average. And the last fight with Alex Wesker, it can get difficult, but at least it can push you and challenge you in some way. The bosses in Resident Evil 6, in my opinion, are not the, I wouldn't say like the absolute like best in the series, but overall, I think the boss fights in Resident Evil 6 are the best, or the final bosses anyway, because while they do take a lot of ammo to destroy, there's a lot of character development in the campaigns. There's the symbolism in the Derek C. Simmons fight, and there's the imposing nature of the of House and Chris's campaign, and then there's just the Ustanok and Jake's campaign. So the boss fights in Resident Evil 6, the final bosses are just really good, especially Derek C. Simmons. So many different forms, and it's pretty cool and interesting. And then Evelyn, she's just an old lady, so it's like, what can she really do? And that's one of the worst parts about the game, is just the bosses. Overall, like, the bosses and the characters are just not interesting, except for Evelyn. And, you know, I guess the molded's interesting because, like, on normal mode, after you defeat Margaret, the 4-legged molded start becoming a thing, and I guess the fungus doesn't want to let people die, so I guess like the mold will try to make copies, like subpar copies of the person of the thing that they're trying to bring back. So like in Margaret's case, like since she went through the mutation and she became very insect-like and she was crawling on all fours, I guess that's what the 4-legged molded was. It was an attempt to recreate Margaret, but it didn't work. And I don't know what the fat molded I do not know what the fat molded are supposed to be a recreation of, but it's likely a recreation of Jack's second mutation, which that could make sense. But yeah, overall I believe the game is solid. It's just that the bosses and the characters are just meh. And the fight that could have been like super good, Margaret fight, it ends up being more annoying than anything, which is a real shame. Well, at least the fight with Jack, the second one, is pretty dang good in my opinion. But at least the game has great gameplay. The atmosphere is pretty good. The unknown atmosphere is really good. It helps keep the game fresh. And Madhouse is fairly challenging for casual players. You know, it's fairly challenging. But if there is one thing like Capcom should have done, they should release a new difficulty. Maybe call it like there's Madhouse difficulty. Maybe call it like Slaughterhouse difficulty. And here's some ideas. Enemies spawn faster. That's one of the main problems with the game is enemies, like, you can go into the safe room and then enemies will like despawn and then like literally like they'll spawn like 7 seconds later. And that's too slow. So like if you sped up the enemy's spawn rate, you would make them a lot more annoying to deal with. Or like cut the animation in half, because like enemies, they take like an additional like 3 seconds to spawn, or to like, there's this animation that they're dedicated to when they're spawning, and you can still move around them while they're spawning and they can't touch you. So like maybe have the amount of time it takes for them to spawn, not have, but like reduce it a lot, or enable them to act faster out of the spawning animation, because you can completely cheese through that game by abusing their despawn. The enemy despawns. And it kind of like spits in the survival horror aspect of the game. But at least it doesn't betray it completely like Resident Evil 3. Like Resident Evil 3 is like you have this nemesis chasing you, and he's supposed to be big and scary, and as soon as you find out how to adequately dodge him, he is just trivial. Nemesis is trivial. One of the best zombies in gaming is just trivial. And not only that, but the gunpowder mechanics are they're so broken. You can get magnum rounds, freeze rounds, and you can just completely cheese that game. Especially with the dodge mechanic. Ooh, that dodge mechanic is so broken. Other changes for like maybe Slaughterhouse and Resident Evil 7. Enemies should move slightly faster than Ethan. Like on Madhouse, they get sped up, so like they're just as fast as Ethan. But I think enemies should move like maybe very slightly faster than Ethan, because they would be more intimidating that way. Like I think they have enough durability to pose a threat, so they don't actually need their durability buffed. But maybe I was thinking like on normal to Madhouse. On Madhouse, there's different enemy spawns. Enemies spawn in different places. Maybe on Slaughterhouse, that change can be implemented too, but they would be in places which they are much harder to avoid. And yeah, that's pretty much my whole recommendation for like how to make the game better, and just my opinion on Resident Evil 7 in general. So if anybody liked this addendum, comment, like, favorite, subscribe. And I'll see you all in just another one of my projects. You all take care now.